Hey, how are you? I am Chris Robin, aka at Detroit Beastie. Next to me is Keith Flemming. He so graciously agreed to join me while Dave is away with his son. They're watching soccer. They're in East Lansing in Michigan, watching the Michigan State Spartans play soccer. So how could you tell a dad no? And it is what it is. But we are here with you live with fantasy6pack.net. And before we get into what we're looking for this week, just make sure you go to the website. If you're watching this video, I know it just started. Give the YouTube page a like and a subscribe and a comment and whatever you want to do. Follow Keith, follow me. We're the brains of this whole operation. And to be
And the
honest with you,
looks.
yeah, looks. To be honest with you, Dave, you can go to as many soccer games as you want because me and Keith can get this thing rolling. But as it stands now, we are on the week 8 is already kicked off. It was a pretty good Thursday night football game. I enjoyed myself. It was kind of a weird Thursday night football game, a game that we thought the Bills were just going to absolutely run away with. I told folks to take Tampa Bay in the
You
plus
told me.
nine,
Thank you very
nine and a
much.
half. Yep, and it worked out. So Thursday night is already kicked off. So week 8 is off and running. Granted, this is Friday. Normally we do our DFS den on Thursday, but this is Friday. And what better way to spend our Friday night than getting together and talking DFS? The World Series Game 1 starts today. I have the
Go
Arizona
D-backs.
Diamondbacks
Yeah.
jersey in the background that they so graciously sent me. So it's a lot of stuff going on here. Keith, what's been going on this week? You want to talk to the people about anything before we get into quarterbacks here?
Sure. The first thing I want to talk about is, do you remember what you did to me last time we did this show together? You told me that Dave was in New Orleans getting engaged.
Yeah,
I didn't know
it was an
anything about
idea.
Dave at that point.
Yeah,
And I text him like a dumbass going, "Congratulations on your engagement."
it
And
was a
he's like,
complete
"What is
joke.
wrong with you?" And I'm like, "What do you mean?" He goes, "Dude, I definitely did not get engaged this
I
weekend."
made
And I
it
was like,
up. I made it
"Yeah,
up. We were
it
we
was
were live. We were live, and I made it up because I was like, just like what I do when we're live on the air. I talk. I mean, because one thing I cannot stand. On the radio or even a live broadcast, dead air is the
yeah."
death of any program. So I saw an opportunity and I ran with it. And again, Dave took his girlfriend to New Orleans, and it was a special thing. And he was like, we're going to make love and it's going to be fantastic. And I said, what better time to get engaged than when you're in New Orleans? And I didn't know you were going to text him and say, hey,
Trying
congratulations.
to
Because
be a
I,
nice guy, you know.
yeah,
He's like, "You're a
and I,
moron, Keith."
yeah, and I appreciate that you took it upon yourself to be because you're a Southern gentleman. But no, he didn't get engaged, and there was no, it wasn't even made available. I just made it up on the spot, and here we go. So as it stands now, week 8 has already kicked off, and there is an absolute slew of games. There is an absolute ton of value to be had this week. Bottom of the barrel quarterbacks is out. The running backs article is out. I've been behind about a day and a half because of my current job. Sorry about I have a real life gig and all that, but I'm going to do my best. I'm going to stay up late tonight and I'm going to try and get the wide receiver article done, bottom of the barrel article done the best that I can. If not, we press a double album and we do wide receivers and tight ends tomorrow, and we're done with it and we're off and rolling on Sunday. But let's start with quarterback, shall we? And I'm just going to go in bottom of the barrel. At this point, we know how this thing works. I give the most expensive player at the position to put in to perspective, like the cheaper prices. And right now, it is Jalen Hurts, and that's only because Pat Mahomes is not on the main slate. Patrick Mahomes is Pat Mahomes on the main slate? I'd have to
Yeah,
look
they're
at
the
that.
four. I think they're the 4 o'clock game.
4 o'clock game. Yeah. So in my notes, Jalen Hurts is the most expensive on FanDuel. On DraftKings, Patrick Mahomes is the most expensive. And when you look at Jalen Hurts, he's playing Washington. Washington is dead last against quarterbacks, but that's out of my realm. I go the cheap route. I go the bottom of the barrel route. So I've talked for a minute. I'll toss it to you, Keith. Give me some guys from a cash point perspective that you're into from the quarterback position here.
So this week there's 3 guys that I feel really comfortable about for cash games. Again, that's your 50-50 single entries, etc. And the first one is Lamar Jackson. I mean, obviously, if you want to do Patrick Mahomes or Jalen Hurts, I got no problem with that either. But like on DK, which is what I like to lean into, They're both more expensive than Lamar. Lamar's 8,100 on DK, 88 on FanDuel, facing Arizona. Since week 2, he looks a lot like the Lamar Jackson from 2019 that kind of set the world on fire and was just unbelievable. At that time, set the record for the most fantasy points by any player ever. And Arizona allows a ton of points to QBs, over 20 points per game. Both Burrow, Daniel Jones, Brock Purdy all scored 20-plus points versus him. But what I really like about Lamar this week and just in general this season, and why I'm so confident rolling with him at his value, and don't even feel like you have to stack him. Like if you want to stack him with the Flowers and Andrews, and Aguilar, Beckham, if you want to get cheap, you can. But he's running again. Since the Dobbins injury, averaging 54.5 yards per game, 5 rushing touchdowns. We know how big that is in DFS to have that QB that's giving you, that's 5.4 points basically per game, just in rushing alone. And QBs have rushed for 10-plus yards in 4-7 games versus this Arizona team, and they've scored 3 rushing touchdowns. The only really good running quarterback they faced this year, Daniel Jones, had 59 yards and a touchdown. So I really like Lamar this week. And again, you don't necessarily have to stack him. The second guy is somebody that it's weird how some weeks there's people that you like immediately and you're pretty much set and you go forth. Then there's other guys that you just keep finding out more and more information as you do research. And it's like, holy crap, do I like this guy? And that is where I'm at with CJ Stroud this week. He was not even, when I did my Wednesday spot on ESPN Northwest Florida, I didn't even mention him. But just in that time, he's 6,300 on DK, 7,400 on FanDuel at Carolina. He's one of the best quarterbacks in the league on passes of 10-plus yards. 79 pass attempts of 10-plus yards this year, almost 1,000 yards passing, a ridiculous 114.9 passer rating, 5 touchdowns. Why that's important. Carolina, they've played 6 games. There's already been 9 different pass catchers to have a 30-plus yard reception this season versus the Carolina Panthers. And there's a lot more to this. Carolina, they run zone defense at the 6th highest rate in the NFL, almost 80%. Stroud against the zone this year, 10th in passer rating, 7th in accuracy rating. It gets even better. The Panthers cannot create pressure. They just can't. They're dead last in pressure rate this season. Stroud is 5th among QBs with that clean pocket when he's not facing pressure. And then both of his best 2 receivers, Tank Dell and Nico Collins, they're both top 7 in yards per route run against, again, a clean pocket when they're not getting pressure. I particularly love Tank Dell, and I'll get into him when we get into the wide receivers, but this is just one of those matchups where everything Houston does well from a passing standpoint, Carolina just sets them up for it with their scheme. They run the least press coverage in the NFL, which again, most of their wide receivers are much better when not being press covered on the outside. So I really like CJ Stroud. And then the third guy, I got to give you a lot of credit, Chris, because you've been on this guy, for months. And I'm a Falcons fan. I didn't even believe in him. And it was Desmond Ridder, 5,100 on DK, 6,700 on FanDuel. He's having a monster fantasy season. He's scaring the shit out of me as a Falcons fan, game to game, and making my blood pressure go up. But as a fantasy quarterback, he's been great. His last 3 games, averaging over 20 points per. On DK, that's 5th among all QBs. He scored 16.8 points or more in all 3 of those games. That 16.8 was last week when he had 3 fumbles. The one in the end zone was absolutely his fault. So he should have had a minimum there. That was an 8-point swing. So he would have had 24.8 points last week if not for that fumble. But the other 2 people were being a little harsh. One was he got blindsided by a blitzer that was not picked up. I don't really blame him for that. And the other was a bad snap between the center and the quarterback. So they at least deserve 50-50 blame for that. In those 3 games, though, and I had to double check this, he is 3rd in EPA among quarterbacks per dropback, 3rd in success rate, and 3rd in explosive play rate. The only QBs higher than him over those last 3 games, Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen. Unbelievable stuff. And a lot of that is from the fact that we've seen this from Dave Eddy. He's sharing all kinds of great stats on his Twitter account. You check that out at Corporal Eddy. But the Falcons, Tyler Algier, number 1 among running backs of average defenders in the box. Bijan Robinson's number 3. So they're forcing the Falcons to throw, and Ritter is taking advantage of it. The other big thing is London and Pitts were seeing about 35% of Ritter's pass attempts through the first 4 weeks. That number's close to 60% in the last 3. That is why he's averaging nearly 295 yards per game through the air. And then finally, what I like about Ritter's in the last 3 games, 66 rushing yards, 2 touchdowns. Again, I love it when those QBs get you those free points on the ground. And I think he's only going to run more. This is a Tennessee team that they are very good against the run, but they also are very bad against the pass. I'll talk about Drake London again when we get into the receivers, but I think this is a really good matchup for Ritter. And I'm kind of shocked he's so cheap because, again, over 20 points per game the last 3 weeks, and he's all the way down at 5,100 on DK and 6,700 on FanDuel. But those are the 3 that I'm probably going to have in most of my lineups for cash games this week.
Yeah, and it's a beautiful thing. Ritter is in bottom of the barrel. He's highlighted in pink. And again, Tennessee, it's a tough matchup in a way on paper, right? But paper and when you're playing on the field are 2 different things. You know, the one thing I love about being 100% DFS guy, right? I used to rank, on all the websites and do pretty good with that stuff and write seasonal articles and waiver wire articles. And it just got to be too exhausting. So I'm able to be free in a way with DFS, and I didn't even scream Desmond Ritter from the mountaintops. I just secretly drafted him across the board in all my Superflex leagues, like the Fishbowl, or I got a few that I play with my family and friends, and he is my second quarterback that I drafted in like the 18th round. Nobody saw it, and I'm just smashing everything because Ritter has been so good. But a second guy I want to mention, they're going hand in hand, and for some goddamn reason, I hate to use the Lord's name in vain, for some GD reason, Sam Howell and Desmond Ritter to me every week are guys I want in my lineup. And Sam Howell, Washington is playing Philadelphia, and you might say, well, Washington, Philadelphia, same division. It's been completely one-sided for how many years? Philly has beat the crap out of Washington all these years. Again, when it comes to DFS, I don't give a crap about the final score. Philly could win 75-60. Who cares who wins the game? I want points. I want all that stuff. And Sam Howell has been just throwing the ball like a madman. And when you look at him on FanDuel, he's 6'9" on FanDuel, 5'2" on DK, only $27 on Yahoo. And as you said, Ritter, 5'1" on DK. So when Ritter is $200 less than Sam Howell on FanDuel, and on Yahoo, Ritter's only $20, and the bare minimum on Yahoo has been $10. So you're looking, it's just crazy to me. So I could see a case here where Sam Howell in a game, they're at home, Washington's at home against Philadelphia, and when we talked about Jalen Hurts' DVP, I mean, Washington's 32nd overall. Philly's going to have their way with Washington, and that's beautiful. I love that for Sam Howell because he's going to be playing from behind. He's going to be pushing the pace of play. He's going to attempt 35 to 40 passes. He's going to take a page out of Kirk Cousins' playbook. It seems like Kirk Cousins attempts 50 passes a game, and it's nuts to me. So Sam Howell, interceptions be damned, or only in his second season, I don't care. To me, Sam Howell in GPPs has that panache to me this week where he can get to 300 yards, for some odd reason, 377 yards. I mean, that would be insane to me. That to be fair with you, Keith, 377 is a lot to predict. I know I just made that up, but that's something Sam Howell could do in this
290
game.
versus them in the first game at Philly. So it's definitely not crazy.
And when I have every game right here, I need to do a better job. But this is every game played this week, and I have my final score. I have my betting. I have the betting lean in each game, and I have Philadelphia. I have Philadelphia to put up 31 points, but I have Washington to hang 20 plus points. So to me, Sam Howell is good for at least 2 touchdowns, whether it's one on the ground, one on the air, 2, any way you slice it. I want to talk about Derek Carr briefly. New Orleans is going to the Colts. The Colts are 20th overall against opposing quarterbacks. Carr 6-6 on FanDuel, 5-5 on DK. The Saints offense, has been just awful and stagnant. But last time out, Derek Carr and the New Orleans Saints offense tapped into something in the fourth quarter, and that's what I think we all expected the Saints to look like full time, right? And it came down to that last drive where Foster Moreau, he's probably, you've got to admit that as a human being, he's still probably beating himself up for that. That was a touchdown, and New Orleans should have won that game. But Derek Carr in that drive, right, or in a drive to put he had 3 back-to-back, splash plays, 17 yards to Michael Thomas, 19 yards, and then 17-yard touchdown to Michael Thomas again. That was the Derek Carr I want. That was the New Orleans Saints offense I want. So it was there, and I'm hoping that confidence kind of carries over into this game. And the Colts, as I said, the Colts to me are they're nothing special, but they're not shitty, but they're not like, oh my God, we got to have Indianapolis Colts in our lineups. But when you look at Derek Carr, he has a ton of offensive skill positions at his disposal, and if Michael Thomas can get back, we've already seen Michael Thomas's best season as a professional wide receiver. That's common knowledge, and that's okay. But that touchdown he caught was reminiscent of prime Michael Thomas. And if he could just do anything, along those same lines, this week and moving forward, I think New Orleans is going to make a run. But we're talking DFS week to week. So to me, Derek Carr is someone very much on my radar this week, given everything around him. And one thing I will say, I know we're a ways away from talking about wide receivers. People have been talking about Chris Olave, and supposed to be the stud wide receiver, and it looks like he's been giving up on routes, right, and getting yelled at. On third down, he's not where he's supposed to be, and Derek Carr airmails the ball, and everybody yells at Derek Carr for that. But it was Chris Olave who gave up on the play. I've heard and I've read a lot about that, and so to me, Olave, I look at Olave along the same lines as these other stud wide receivers from that class, like Garrett Wilson, like Drake London, and he was fantastic in his rookie season. But what's going on with him in his second year? But to me, to be truthful, to be honest, I am almost sure Derek Carr has sat these guys down sometime this week and said, this is what we can do when we put our minds to it. So I don't expect Chris Olave to just give up on running his routes and all that. One more guy I'll mention, it's Matthew Stafford, because the Rams go to Dallas. We all know, Stafford wasn't born in Dallas. He moved to Dallas as a teenager, and he played high school football in Dallas. And if you didn't know, he's best friends with Clayton Kurt, all that, all that joking stuff that they say, that they continue to say. But Matthew Stafford going into Dallas, and this is a tough matchup for the Rams, because of Dallas right now, 7th overall against getting to quarterbacks. Their defensive line and their linebackers, including Micah Parsons, they're studs. They're very good. But in the most recent weeks, Matthew Stafford has become Matthew Stafford again. The Matthew Stafford we all know and love. And I've been calling him the 5 o'clock shadow Matthew Stafford. That's the guy that you want, who doesn't care, who will play with a separated shoulder. He'll do anything in his power to get his team where it needs to be. And now with Cooper Kupp back, he's playing in unison with Puka, and they're tearing it up, and they're doing very well together. So to me, Matthew Stafford this week, he's only 6-5 on FanDuel, 6-6 on DK. People are just going to glance over Matthew Stafford. And when I look at what I have for my final score here, I do think Dallas wins, but it's close. And we're looking at a way over in this game, where I would expect Dallas to win 28-27, something like that. So I think Stafford is good for at least 2 touchdowns. 3 is in the realm of possibility. So when I'm looking at quarterbacks, I got like 12 more I could talk about. We're already 20 minutes in. If you want any more of this information, you can go to Yeah, you can go to fantasy6pack.net. You can sign up. The cheapest package is $9.99. That is just unbelievably cheap, and everything is going on in the Discord. I am there as much as I can be. I know you're there as much as you can be. And Dave Eddy is like
A
lives.
madman. Yep.
Yeah, he lives in the fantasy six pack Discord. He is just like, before you know it, it's like, 1,000-word essay he drops in the DFS channel. So if you want a part of this thing here that we're building, and I've said it a million times, and I'll say it right now before I toss it to you for running backs, right? Fantasy Six Pack has always been known for their unbelievable rankings, right? You can see all the, the little crests that Fantasy Pro sends them. When I say they have, I mean Fantasy Six Pack has some of, if not the best rankers in the game of fantasy football here. And DFS and sports betting was kind of lacking. That was the whole idea of bringing me in here to the website, is to bring DFS and sports betting, to Fantasy Six Pack, so we could just double down on rankings, DFS, and sports betting. And I know it's week 8 and we're getting views, we're getting clicks, and we're getting links on our DFS stuff. But I'm telling you right now, Fantasy Six Pack is one of, I'm not going to say one of, it is the fastest growing DFS site, that people are going to get their information, because of guys like you, Keith, because of guys like Dave Eddy, and then me coming up the rear at third place. So just anything you need, you can find us on the Discord, you can find us on Twitter, and just go to fantasy6pack.net and look what package is right for you. So let's move on to running backs. 21 minutes into this thing, not that we're timing it, but it's Friday night, World Series. First pitch is in probably an hour, I believe. 8:03.
I think so. Yeah.
8:03 of all weird. It's all about, own commercials and all that stuff. But let's start with running backs, and I'll kick it to you. One thing I will say, Christian McCaffrey, of course, is the most expensive running back, rightfully so. And and Dave is not here, but in his stead, I'll say, when it comes to it's death taxes and Christian McCaffrey in cash games if he's healthy. So Keith, give me some guys at running back that you are, just you can't wait to put in your lineups this week.
Well, in that light, I've got to mention CMC. There's 6 backs that I really like this week. 9,200 on DK, 10-2 on FanDuel. Man, they make it pricey, though, versus Cincy. I will admit that if Purdy ends up playing, I probably will not use him in my cash games nearly as much, because
Purdy is already. I'm on mute. Excuse me. I'm
that's what I was like, is it me? Or I was like, I can't hear him.
I'm almost certain that Brock Purdy has already been labeled out. Brock Purdy.
Well, it was, and then I saw a report today from a guy in San Francisco saying that. Hold on, I want to make sure I get this right. I don't want to read something wrong when I just read it. I am shocked that he would play, but Nick Wagner, who is an ESPN NFL reporter for the Niners, says Brock Purdy is aiming to pass the final step of the concussion protocol on Saturday. If he does, Kyle Shanahan said he will start. Okay. So, again,
I thought he was already labeled out.
It would be crazy if they played him with what happened with Tua last year and what the NFL is trying to do. But if he does play, I don't like this play as much, because I just think that if he's out, I know Sam Darnold is a capable quarterback, but it's just an easy case. They're going to run the ball a ton with CMC. He scored a touchdown in 16 straight games. I know he's pissed about his fumble last week. That's the first time he fumbled in forever. And then the big thing is, Cincy, they've allowed either a 100-yard rusher or a rushing touchdown to the number 1 running back in 5 of 6 games. And they give up the 5th most yards before contact in the NFL, almost 1.5 yards. And San Francisco's around 12th, 13th on the other side of it, where they get about 1.4 yards with each run before contact. So that's a good matchup. But it's the next 2 guys that I really like. The first being Alvin Kamara, who, again, part of it is the car deal that you were talking about. 7.3 on DK, 8.3 on FanDuel. Just a ridiculous 21.7 points per game on DK in his 4 games. He's only scored 1 touchdown, and he's averaging over 20 points, averaging nearly 20 rushing attempts the last 3. The big thing, 8 or more targets in 3 or 4 games, an absurd 9 receptions per since he's been back, 36 receptions in 4 games, just crazy. It's why I do like your car play a lot. And part of that is Indy. Goodness gracious, do they struggle with wide receivers? And this is the big stat for me. 34 receptions allowed to opposing running backs so far this year, 5 or more in 4 of 7 games. And now they've got a guy in Alvin Kamara who, again, 9 receptions per his first 4 games. And then the 12 rushing touchdowns allowed is the other deal. That's why if you want to play Williams this week, I don't hate it. I could see it being the week that he vultures and does what he does because, again, the Colts have given up 12 rushing touchdowns, 5 games with multiple rushing touchdowns. But I really like Kamara because of that stat about the receptions, especially on DK. He's just automatic. A guy I like on both, Travis Etienne, 7.2 on DK, 8.7 on FanDuel. He's just been a monster.
Yeah. 3 straight games. I believe 3 straight games with 2 or more touchdowns.
It's unbelievable. And I was wrong. I thought Tank Bigsby was going to be taking a lot of the carries. I didn't think Travis Etienne was a workhorse. He is. I'm wrong. I'm learning it. And until they get him higher on this.
I wouldn't say he's a workhorse per se. He's a thoroughbred, and I hate that term to talk about players like their possessions, like they're animals, right? But to me, Travis Etienne has that blue chip prospect pedigree, and he's making good, and it's awesome to see him healthy and active on the field after that nasty knee injury, his rookie season. So sorry to cut you off.
You're good, man.
You may continue.
The big thing for me on DK, which I do like him slightly more than FanDuel, but 17.8 points or more in 5 of 7. And again, I love this with running backs on DraftKings. He's averaging 6.2 points per game just in the passing game this year on DraftKings. 3 or more receptions in 6 of 7, 3+ targets in every game. And I know you're going to say, well, the Steelers have been pretty good versus the run, especially the last few weeks. They have, but let's look at who they play. It's something me and Joe always talk about. They played Houston, who has not been able to run the ball. They played Baltimore, who their best running back's a quarterback. They played the Raiders, who, I don't know, they need to start putting up, missing signs for Josh Jacobs with what's going on this year after last year. And then the Rams without Kyron Williams. The first 2 games, when they played good running backs of CMC, Jerome Ford, and Nick Chubb, they gave up 322 yards on the ground at 6.7 yards per carry. And ETN is absolutely the best or the toughest test that this defense has seen since week 2. So I really do like ETN. The next play is probably going to be the most used across the board for me, and that's Isaiah Pacheco, 6,100 on DK, 74 on FanDuel, touchdown in 4 of his last 5 games, 17 touches or more in 5 straight. But what I love about him is last year there was 11 games where Pacheco led the Chiefs in carries. He only had 14 targets in the passing game all of last season. This year, he's still leading the Chiefs in carries by a lot, but already has 23 targets this season, 3 or more targets in 4 or 5, 10 targets in just his last 2 games, and he's averaging almost 7 points on DraftKings in his last 5 games, just in the passing game. Granted, that helps a little bit. They had that touchdown, but still, it shows the consistency he's being involved in it. And the Broncos, 32nd on DraftKings and FanDuel versus running back translation. They just stink. They can't stop the run, and that is apparent with their 7th highest yards before contact allowed, almost 1.5 yards. And if you watch the Miami game, they're not a good tackling team either. Really like Pacheco, and it was kind of a miracle, I felt like, that Denver kind of slowed down the Kansas City offense in this first matchup 2 weeks ago. I don't see that happening again, and I think it's coming. Pacheco has not had a 2 rushing touchdown game, something he did 3 times last year in those 11 games. It's coming. The next guy I like a lot, again on both sides, Breece Hall, 5,900 on DraftKings, 7,200 on FanDuel at the Giants. Week 5, you can tell the Jets, they basically took any limitations that Hall had in his snap count away. He had a 52% snap share in week 5, his highest, and a 65% in week 6. He saw 11 red zone carries in those 2 games. He had 1 red zone carry in his first 4. It's so much to the point that Dalvin Cook is complaining about his role in the offense publicly, voicing his frustration. Too bad, too sad, Dalvin. I like you a lot, but Hall leads the league in yards per carry at 6.5. He's averaging in those 2 games almost 20 touches per between his receptions and his rush attempts. He scored in both of those games, over 20 points per game in that span. And then the big one, this is stuff you dream of. Jets, 5th best in yards before contact, 1.51 yards. The Giants, 3rd worst in yards before contact allowed at 1.65. Breece Hall is going to feast on a bad rushing defense in the Giants. And then the final play, I'm not crazy about it anymore because I don't know if you heard, Jerome Ford now might play. What a tough dude. He was like doubtful 2 days ago. Now they're saying that he practiced. He looked good. If he doesn't, I love Kareem Hunt, 5,200 on DK, 7,000 on FanDuel. Or if you even want to go cheaper again, if Ford's out, I like Pierre Strong. He's 4,300 on DK. But this is just all about the volume. The Browns, 10th most rushing attempts in the league, 7th most rushing yards. Remember, they've already had their bye, and they're still top 10 in both those categories. It shows how much they run, how effectively they run. And since the bye, Hunt scored 3 touchdowns, 15 points or more on DK, and Seattle has allowed 5 rushing touchdowns. I think you can still play Hunt even if Ford does, because we've seen that it's a 1-2 punch. But especially if Ford's out, I like Hunt a lot because we saw it when he was with Nick Chubb. He got a majority of the red zone carries, which would drive people like me that are Georgia fans and know the running back Nick Chubb is. Like, why are you giving it to Kareem Hunt? But he's going to get definitely a majority of the red zone carries if Ford is out. If Ford plays, it's probably going to be more 50-50. But I still think he gets enough against Seattle to possibly work in a game. Cleveland's going to try to run the ball.
Yeah, absolutely. And I have a weird kind of deal going on with running backs this week, and I have them all highlighted in different colors, and I'm going to start it this way. Carolina, Minnesota, Pittsburgh, and the Rams. I love the idea of stacking both running backs from the same team. Carolina, it would be Miles Sanders and Hubbard. Pittsburgh, it would be Najee Harris and Jalen Warren. In the LA and the Rams, it would be D. Hendy, Darrell Henderson, and Royce Freeman there at the bottom. And even Minnesota, Alexander Madison and Cam Akers. Last week, when people were watching the Minnesota game, they were saying, where's Madison? What the heck's going on? Is Cam Akers now the RB1? But to me, in GPPs, in these single entries or these multi entries where there's 150,000 people playing, we have to get weird and unique. And I saw an opportunity this week, and I didn't, I each week I write bottom of the barrel week 8, and it's a blank sheet, and then I go from there. And so this stuff just gets figured out on the fly as I'm writing, as I'm looking, as I'm reading, and it just hit me the other day where it's back in the olden days of DFS, back when it was created in 2009, 2010, it was like a cardinal sin to play 2 running backs from the same team, right? Because you want the one guy to score, you want the stud running back to get all the points. But why can't we play 2 running backs from the same team? There's no rule book, there's no hand guide to this thing and what we got going on here. So let's start with Carolina, and I'm going to breeze through these because we're 33 minutes into this thing. Wanted to keep it around 45 minutes, and we still got wide receivers, and I got like 30 of them, but we'll keep it tight. We'll keep it tight here, Keith. Miles Sanders and Chuba Hubbard. Miles Sanders is not the not the stud that we were promised coming from Philadelphia, because he's been in and out of the lineup hurt, and it looks like he will be back in action this week. And Carolina is playing Houston. Houston 23rd overall against opposing running backs. Miles Sanders, 6'3" on FanDuel, 4.9 on DK. Hubbard, 6'3" on FanDuel, and 4.8 on DK. I see no reason why we can't play both Carolina running backs in the same entry and be good to go. And if you wanted to toss in Bryce Young for the heck of it, have at it. I love both of those running backs, the Carolina running backs. When we move down to Pittsburgh, this is a little bit tougher of a matchup, but on paper it says it's a tough matchup, but the eye test tells me not really. Jacksonville is a good team, but they're still leaky in some points of their game, and Najee Harris finally found the end zone, right? And I'm hoping that this is verbatim from my own article, hoping that this one touchdown has now opened the floodgates, right? Because leading up to last week, Najee Harris was just like, a ho-hum guy. You could put him, you're going to start him, you're going to put him in your seasonal lineups, and you're going to get 5 to 8 points from him. He's not going to goose egg you. He's not going to screw you. He's not going to do that. But now that he found the end zone, he's got that taste, that blood in the water, that shark kind of thing. But when you look at Jaylen Warren, Najee Harris is still out touching Jaylen Warren, but it's by like this much. So to me, playing both Najee Harris and Jaylen Warren, you're going to have that backfield on lock against the Jacksonville defense, who is they're okay in their own right. As I said, DVP wise, they're 11th overall against opposing running backs. And I turn to the side here because I want to look at the final score of this game, because it plays a lot into the I've always made my intentions clear. When I look at, that's the first thing I do every Sunday night or whenever the lines open for the following week, I'm on it, and then I start to build and I go from there. When you look at this Jacksonville-Pittsburgh game, the over-under is at around 42.5 points. I have Pittsburgh to win the game, and you can get Pittsburgh plus 2.5 points. So you're good. So you're going to bet on a team getting points that I think is going to win outright to begin with. And it starts with Najee Harris and Jaylen Warren. So these guys together are going to get you every single thing that you need out of the backfield this week. And their price tags are beautiful. As I said, I'm a FanDuel guy. Najee 6'3" on FanDuel, Jaylen Warren only 5'8", and you're going to get double-digit carries from both of these guys. You're going to get, four. I don't want to say 4 or 5 receptions. That's a ton, but you're looking at least I would say 3 to 4 targets a piece from these guys. So to me, Harris and Warren are on my radar. When we look at the Los Angeles Rams in Dallas, again, Dallas 7th overall against opposing running backs. Their defensive line is good, and their linebackers are outstanding. You never know where Micah Parsons is going to be. But again, Micah Parsons can't be in 2 places at once. Sometimes you watch this guy play and you're like, oh my God, he is in 2 places at one time. Shout out to Obi-Ron. This guy is always around. He's outstanding in Discord. So hi Ronnie, thanks for being here. We appreciate the support and everything you got. ESPN Poker, answer your question in just a moment. I want to get through this. Daryl Henderson, D. Hendy, and Royce Freeman, both in a DFS lineup. To me, if I were to say that to the man on the street, someone, they shove a mic, they go, so what do you think about, the collapse of the, what would it be? What do you think about the collapse and the hand sanitizer has gone up $10? What do you think? And they put and you get these weird answers to me. If you were to ask man on the street about Daryl Henderson and Royce Freeman, they would look at you and go, I don't know who these guys are. I can't answer that question, and I'll answer it for you. Daryl Henderson is only 5'9" on FanDuel, 4'8" on DK, and Royce Freeman 5'5" on FanDuel, 4'6" on DK. So you can get 2 running backs who are going to get a ton of action in a game against Dallas, where I would admit I would like to think, right? I said I love Matthew Stafford to throw the football, but again, Sean McVay is always mixing it up, and we don't know what we're going to get week to week out of this guy. That's why I think he is, a phenomenal head coach. But to me, Royce Freeman and Darrell Henderson in the same entry is a good move. And given their price tags, you're able to just stack up studs at wide receiver and at tight end, or however you want to do it. And last but not least, I was going to say Minnesota. When you look at Alexander Mattinson and Cam Akers, I've always been a fan of Cam Akers when he was in LA. I've never been big on Alexander Mattison because when Dalvin Cook was there, he was their lead back. And I can't believe Dalvin Cook is bitching in the jet. I mean, the tread on your tires, bro, you got a lot of tread there. And Bryce Young is young. We know he had the knee injury, but you willingly left Minnesota, to go to greener pastures, and you're not getting what you want, so you're going to bitch, and so Dalvin Cook aside, I love Darrell Henderson and Royce Freeman in this game because you're going to get every single touch out of the backfield. Not to mention, if you stack Matthew Stafford with that, you're going to get a ton of points. And when I look at this one, I have the Rams to score, I'm thinking 21 points, 24 points, something like that. I do think Dallas wins this game, but again, final scores, I don't care. I'm looking at points. And I do think there's a chance here where Darrell Henderson and Royce Freeman can find the end zone. Obviously, Cooper Kupp will find the end zone. But to me, Royce Freeman and Darrell Henderson make for a nice, combo stack. Same team, same stack there. And we'll move on from there. One last guy I want to mention as I look through this thing is Tyler Algier in Atlanta. What the heck happened with Bijan last week? They said he was sick.
Headaches, I don't know.
But then if he's sick and all that, and then you give him 1 or 2 carries it was just a really odd occurrence.
Yep.
And even when you look back last year before Bijan was around, Tyler Algier really made his presence felt. He was a rookie, if I'm not mistaken, last year, put up 1,000 yards, and he was awesome, right? And then they draft Bijan. But to me, Tyler Algier at 6'2" on FanDuel, $5,000 on DK is worth the price of admission, because I could see Tyler Algier, regardless of what they do with Bijan, Tyler getting, I think I have him around 11 or 12 carries. And when you look at what he's averaged per carry, let me look that up really quick. And I'll fill.
The good news is that in games that the Falcons are up, which I think they will be up, because again, Will Levis is starting for the Titans. Yep, they're going to get Algier gets a lot more carries. Bijan has been a lot more carries in the games that are either really competitive or we're down in. But when they're up, he is their closer, and I think they're going to be up in this game. So I actually think he'll get more carries than what his average has been.
Yeah, and again, so give me Tyler Algier in a game where I'm struggling to find. I write so small sometimes. I have a hard time finding. Atlanta is playing at Tennessee. I have Atlanta to win 21-14. So you're looking at 3 touchdowns there. Could be Tyler Algier gets 1 of them, 2 of them, who knows? And we'll move on. So when we look at the wide receiver position, this is where it gets interesting, because as I flip my page here, I have, it's unbelievable. I could count it, but these are all the wide receivers I'd like to mention in bottom of the barrel. And I have 6 written in the margin really tiny, because I got to make room for the tight ends here. So to me, I'll let you kick off the wide receivers in cash games, and we'll go from there, because when I get to when you toss it back to me, I'm just going to be picking names out of a hat here, because there is a ton of wide receivers with just green matchups this week. So Keith, what are you thinking at the wide receiver position this week?
All right, so at the top prices, there's 2 guys to me that one of them needs to be in every one of your lineup. It's either Jamar Chase, 8,100 on DK, 8,500 on FanDuel, or it's AJ Brown, who is 8K on DK, 8,700 on FanDuel. Jamar Chase, since week 3, 14 targets per, 10 receptions per, 121 yards per. Just ridiculous. The San Francisco defense, too, all of a sudden they're not getting a lot of pressure. Only 2 sacks the last 2 games against teams who offensive lines allow more higher pressure rates than the Bengals. And in case you need reminding, wide receiver number 1s have feasted versus the San Francisco team. Obviously, Adamson, we all saw last week, 7 for 123, 2 touchdowns on 10 targets. Amari Cooper without Deshaun Watson on 8 targets, 4 catches, 108 yards. Marquise Brown, 7 catches for 96 yards. And then the Puka breakout game, if week 1 wasn't enough, 20 targets, 15 receptions, 147 yards week 2. I think Chase has a monster game. But Brown, I mean, it's the same deal. Since week 2, 5 games, almost 12 targets per game, over 8 receptions per. He's had at least 127 yards or more in 5 straight games, averaging almost 30 points per game on DK. Washington, 25th versus opposing wide receivers. And in Brown's first game versus his team just a few weeks ago, he had his best game, 9 receptions on 13 targets, 175 yards, 2 scores. Again, another team in Washington really struggles with number 1 receiver. Stephon Diggs, 8 receptions, 111 yards. We all remember DJ Moore on Thursday night, 8 receptions, 230, 3 touchdowns. Drake London, 9 receptions, 125 yards. And I would argue outside of Tyreek Hill, there is no better big play receiver in football than A.J. Brown. 11 different pass catchers this season have a 30-yard plus reception versus Washington, including A.J. Brown, who had 2 of them last week. All right, a little bit cheaper plays. I like Christian Kirk a lot. My co-host Joe Matz thinks this is the Calvin Ridley week. There is a lot of data. You can listen to our DFS Kickoff show to find out why, but I'm just looking at it volume. Since week 1, 6 or more targets in every game, 6 straight games of 13.9 points or more on DK. Scored a touchdown 3 of his last 5. And then the big thing for me, he's up to a 23% target share. That is slightly higher than what it was last year before Calvin Ridley came around. So it's not having the effect everybody thought it was. My boy Drake London's next, 5,100 on DK, 67 on FanDuel. Since week 2, over 8 targets per game. He would be wide receiver 15 in PPR leagues since week 2. There are 27 wide receivers in the main slate on DraftKings that are more expensive. To me, that is the definition of value. Last 3 games, at least 7 targets in each, at least 6 receptions in all those games. And in his only other matchup this year versus a bottom third defense versus wide receivers in Washington, he had his best game, 24.5 points on DK, saw his most targets 12, had his most receptions 9, most receiving yards 125. Titans giving up 7th most points to opposing wide receivers. And number 1 wide receivers in 6 games this year are averaging 6.8 receptions, 85.6 yards, and 0.66 touchdowns per. My favorite play this week, I'm never down on Tyreek Hill, but yeah, I am concerned both about the injury, but even more so about New England. He had by far his worst game of the year versus New England earlier this year. And if you look at it, they've slowed down some pretty good receivers the last couple of weeks. Bill Belichick is just the king of taking away what you want to do the most and making you beat him another way. If you're going to spin, I'd rather spin down for like A.J. Brown or, Jamar Chase. But Tank Dell's my favorite play of anybody this week by a wide margin. He's 4,900 on DK, 6,000 on FanDuel. I mentioned Stroud. He's 5th when not facing pressure. In passer rate, Nico Collins is 5th in yards per route in those situations, 3.7. Dell is 7th at 3.27. Ironically, though, when they're both on the field, Dell is being targeted more than Collins in those situations. The Panthers, they run the least press coverage in the NFL. Versus press coverage, Collins, 29% target rate, 3.78 yards per route. Dell, 15% target rate, 0.88 yards per route. Versus non-coverage, press coverage, which again, Panthers run the most in the NFL. Collins' rate goes down to a 19% target rate, 2.49 yards per target. Dell, almost a 25% target rate, 3 yards per route. And then finally, the thing I love the most about Dell, Carolina blitzes at the 7th highest rate in the NFL. Dell, when the Texans are blitzed, is seeing over a 30% target share. That's just across the board. Great things for Dell. Everything that Carolina does, Dell excels at. I think he's a slam dunk this week. I do like Nico Collins too. I just think Dell's better. Josh Downs, 4,800 DK, 6,100 on FanDuel. We all know what he's done with Minshew the last couple of weeks. I mean, wide receiver 13 in PPR leagues, wide receiver 15 expected fantasy points, 26 targets, 18 receptions in the 3 games that Minshew started, the 21 target share. But here's the big deal. The Saints allow 38% of their targets to go to slot receivers this season. Josh Downs is third in the NFL in slot snaps. So, I mean, they're just begging Downs, who is already, again, seeing a huge target rate from Minshew when he plays. The Saints are funneling passes to the inside, to that slot receiver. It makes sense with their great corners on the outside. I see Downs again. He's, I think, 5-6 receptions at minimum. Should get 7-8 targets. He's a great price. And then the last one I'm going to give you is Jaden Reed, 3,700 on DK, 5,800 on FanDuel at Minnesota. I would have liked this a lot more if Watson wasn't playing, but it doesn't really matter to me because, again, thanks to Dave Eddy, I'm well aware of this. Check out his Twitter, Corporal Eddy. He's got all kinds of great stats, but only 5 wide receivers right now have more red zone targets than Jaden Reed, which is nuts. They're Devontae Adams, Garrett Wilson, Jacoby Myers, Drake London, Jamar Chase. Even crazier, leaders in targets inside the 5 of the red zone. Waddle with 5, Hill with 4, and then there's Reed with 3, with Myers, Chase, and Jefferson. He is 6th in slot percentage this season, 75.5 percentage. Why do you say I like that? Is because the main reason I love Reed this week, he's 5th among wide receivers in yards per route versus blitzes. The Vikings blitz at the highest rate in the NFL by a ton. They blitz on 56% of their plays. The next highest team blitzes 42% of the snaps. A perfect example of this was last week versus San Francisco. Brandon Ayuk, remember, was only targeted 6 times, while Jennings was targeted 9 and Kittle was targeted 7. Their percentage of slot snaps for the season: Kittle 12, Ayuk 9, Jennings 37. So no surprise, the guy that lines up in the slot saw the most targets. For the Packers, Watson lines up there 28% of the time, Dobbs 14% of the time, and Reed 67% of the time. So I just think it's a great matchup for Reed, who's seeing red zone targets. And again, with the Vikings blitz, he's made a lot of big plays. We saw Jennings make some big plays last week. I think at that price, he's a real home run, and I'm going to have him in a ton of my cash game lineups.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm just I wanted to speak about Downs. I wanted to speak about Tank Dell, but you did that for me, so I can just go on and move from there. I'm going to start with the Washington Commanders wide receivers: Curtis Samuel, Johan Dotson. If I love Sam Howell, then I'm going to love these wide receivers. And again, Philly could blow the doors off this thing, and that's preferably that's what I would want. That's when down
garbage points count just the same.
Yeah, that's when Sam Howell could get, just be throwing his arm off and right. And Curtis Samuel is questionable this week, but everything I've seen, it looks to be manageable. It looks to be playing. And I love the idea of Samuel, Philadelphia 30th overall against opposing wide receivers. And we've seen Curtis Samuel finally starting to, find his way, find his niche and really go from there. He's only $6,000 on FanDuel, 4.2 on DK. When we look at Dotson, last year as a rookie, Dotson was an absolute stud. He had like 6 touchdowns through the first 5 games of the season. And then, this time last week, we saw all the tweets about, he was, holding kicks. He was you draft a guy 6th overall or in the first round or something, and he's your placeholder. That tells you, and that could just be it was the end of practice. They're having fun. And Dotson was like, I feel like holding a kick. Twitter is so toxic and so nasty. It's like, why even bother, going to Twitter for any of that kind of stuff? But Curtis Samuel and Johan Dotson in the same lineup, again, that was always, way back when, that was always the kiss of death. I'm not starting 2 wide receivers, in my entry because I want the one guy, but we don't know who that one guy is going to be in that game. So if we can get Dotson and Samuel in the same lineup, lineup in a game where Philadelphia is going to be blowing off the doors. Sam Howell is going to be looking their way, early and often in this one. I love you mentioned Jaden Reed. Green Bay's playing Minnesota, a very nasty rivalry, an NFC North kind of thing. And I'm a big NFC North slappy. I mean, a Detroit Lions guy. I grew up watching that, the black and blue, division here. Jaden Reed to get Minnesota 26th overall against opposing wide receivers, and Reed is now their slot guy. He's the rookie from Michigan State, right? You got Romeo, you got Watson. We'll bring that Watson question back up here shortly. That if I scroll down, Poker brought up. We'll answer it in a minute, Poker. Sorry to put you off on that one. But when you look at Jalen Reed, 5.8 on FanDuel, 3.7 on DraftKings, and $14 on Yahoo, where I'm not looking for the world from Reed, but in the slot in a game where Green Bay and Minnesota are just going to be going at it. Because when you look at Green Bay, in terms of let me rephrase that. When you look at NFC North games, two teams like that, Chicago, Detroit, anything, Green Bay, Minnesota, it's like the game comes to a screeching halt because they just want to run the ball down each other's throats. But that's the old age NFL. The new age NFL is just pass. And I could see a case to be made here for Reed. Maybe he's targeted 4 or 5 times, catches 3 passes, and one of those is a slant up the middle, 35-yard touchdown, something like that. And given his price tag, that is DFS heaven. That is DFS value to the max here. I also love Josh Downs, as you said, and as I moved down the list, Rashee Rice in Kansas City. I have them winning like 40-something to 7, right? They're, Patrick Mahomes and Kelsey, that is going to be a great stack, but it's going to be like 80% ownership. There's not a lot of money to be made.
It's expensive too.
So why can't we swerve and put in Rice, who's kind of made himself, as that first wide receiver, look in that offense, because they have like 5 guys at wide receiver who are all capable, and Patrick Mahomes does a good job spreading the ball around, but it's always going to be Kelsey. But to me, Rice has made his name, and he is going to be the first wide receiver, so be it, so far, that Patrick Mahomes has looked to. And look, he's $6,000 on FanDuel, $5,000 on DK, $16 on Yahoo. I think he scores a touchdown this week. Again, Kansas City is going to score 42 points. Kelsey's going to score. I think Jerick McKinnon scores. You have, Kelsey's going to score, as you said. But to me, Rashee Rice should be in the mix in GPPs, in these large scale GPPs. Nelson Aguilar and Rashad Bateman, these Baltimore wide receivers, right? They beat the absolute shit out of the Lions last week, who at the time were 5-1, and we're rolling, and they're the best team in the league, or top 3. And then, Baltimore really humbled us. And Nelson Aguilar and Rashad Bateman, Aguilar's bounced around from team to team, right? And maybe he's finally found a home in Baltimore. Bateman was supposed to be this blue chip prospect himself, and he has done nothing, right? But now, with Lamar being back to that MVP status, he's spreading the ball around and he's moving it around. In Arizona, awful, 27th overall against opposing wide receiver. So to me, Aguilar, 5.3 on FanDuel, 3.4 on DK. Bateman, even cheaper, 4.9 on FanDuel, 3.3 on DK. I think each one of those guys could go for 80 yards apiece. I think one of them, maybe even both of them, can score a touchdown in this game. And last but not least, my last Carolina guy, it's the young kid, Jonathan Mingo, against Houston. Houston, they're 5th overall against opposing wide receivers, and Mingo isn't a wide receiver that has earned. I don't want to say hasn't earned respect, because that sounds disrespectful, but to me, Mingo in a GPP is going to be, I'd be shocked if Mingo was more than 2% owned, right? And when you look at his price tag, I won't even, it's like 4.9 and 3.4. He's a bare minimum on Yahoo. And, in a game where Carolina is playing Houston, and when I look at the final score here, Carolina and Houston, if I got to find it, I always bring the show, I bog that down here, but I do think Bryce Young is starting to come into his own, and he's going past his first and second read. So to me, Mingo at those prices has a chance to score a touchdown. And if he does again, that is GPP heaven if he can find the end zone. And last but not least, wide receiver wise, it would be Demario Douglas in New England. They go to Miami, and again, Miami is averaging 30 points a game, and I have Miami to win 35-14, 35-17. So again, final scores don't matter to me, but when I say Miami's going to score 35 points, that means New England and Mac Jones are going to be throwing the ball and trying to do what they got.
Season high 44 throws for Jones in their first matchup.
Exactly, and he's going to do it again, right? And he's young enough to handle this kind of, throwing constantly. And Demario Douglas, it might sound nasty, but to me, Demario Douglas is the New England Patriots wide receiver number one, right? Juju Smith is a total. I've never been a fan of Juju. I don't dislike the guy. I don't wish any ill will towards him, but he is. I don't see him being in the NFL much longer in terms of being a starting wide receiver. But to me, Demario Douglas, 5.2 on FanDuel, 3.3 on DK, only $10 on Yahoo. I think we're looking at Douglas to see 8 or 9 targets. I think he catches 5 or 6 passes. I think 75 to 80 yards is in the realm of possibility. And I wrote a note as you were talking, and 2 touchdowns, and I circled it. So in some weird way, it hit me, and that's just how it happens for me when I do this DFS thing. Demario Douglas will score 2 touchdowns. Let's just call it what it. I'm just going to say it right now.
Lineup right now. Let's do it,
and we'll see what he does. And I know Dave and I it kind of started I made a touchdown parlay, and when we do it organically, it happened a few weeks ago, and Dave liked it so much he said maybe we should start doing this organically each week. So Demario Douglas will be in my anytime touchdown parlay. So when we transition to the tight end thing, I got the alarm going off because the World Series is about to be the first pitch. But when we get to tight ends, hit me with some tight ends, Keith.
You want to answer ESP Poker's question?
Yeah, and this one's easy to me. I'm going to go Cortland Sutton and Josh Downs. And it might be crazy to say you're going to fade Christian Watson in Green Bay. And when we look at that one, when you look at what Green Bay's at home against Minnesota, I think Minnesota is going to do everything in their power to make life a living hell for love. And come to find out, Minnesota has they have Hunter, for God's sakes, and they have this new kid that came out of nowhere. I forget how to pronounce his last name, Wowum or something like that.
He's the country boy.
He is on the second end of that thing, and I think Love is going to have a very hard time. He's going to have just seconds to throw the football, and you could say, well, that's kind of it's weird that you would say that, but then you like Jaden Reed at the same time. Well, in the slot, in an intermediate kind of thing, Jordan Love only needs 2 seconds to get the football to him. So to me, downfield passing, Jordan Love is good luck, hanging in the pocket more than 3 seconds with the Minnesota Vikings pass rush to me. But to me, I'm going to toss Watson out on that one, and I would prefer Cortland Sutton, who has quietly been phenomenal. I'm looking to trade for him in every league possible. And Josh Downs, you said it best when we tossed it to the wide receiver section, and Josh Downs is highlighted in my notes as well. So give me Downs and give me Sutton. So hit me with some tight ends. We'll get to some DSTs, tie this thing up, and we'll get the heck out of here. We just crossed over the 60-minute mark already.
I'll make it quick. And Ronnie asked, I do 2 articles each week, Ronnie, a DFS value, a DFS stack. And you can always hit me up on Twitter too, at Keith Flemming. But
I'm chopped liver. I'm just a nobody. Keith, you've taken over. You're the man now. I'm a
yeah,
nobody.
right. I don't think
Beastie
so.
is Beastie's
I
in the
appreciate
background
that.
now.
All right, real quickly, the tight ends. Travis Kelce, I'm probably going to try to find a way to put him in these cash lineups because, again, you saw me wide receivers I like that were cheap. I mean, I gave 3 that were under 5,000 that I really like this week. That will allow you to play Travis Kelce. That'll allow you to have A.J. Brown or Jamar Chase. I mean, just when we think Kelsey's done, like, he looked like he was slowing down. He was banged up. He's dating Taylor Swift. Like, everything's going the wrong way.
That's what's brought him back to life. I heard
the elixir.
I listened to Howard Stern in my car. That's all I listened to, and even Howard Stern had a stat where when Taylor Swift is at his game, he is averaging about 98 to 98 reception yards a game. When Taylor Swift is not at his games, he's only averaging like 40 something yards, reception yards a game. So let's hope Taylor Swift is at this game and we'll move on. And when you look at one more thing, and I'll toss it back to you, Denver. Bad news against tight ends. They're 32nd overall against opposing tight ends, and Denver could be first overall. It doesn't matter. Kelce always finds a way to get open. I've never seen anything like it in all my years. In all my years watching football, I've never seen one single player always find a way to get open like Travis Kelce. So back to you, Keith.
Yeah, from everything I've heard, he reads the defense, so he doesn't even really have a route when he goes out. He'll look at what the defense is doing. Him and Mahomes, it's unbelievable. But those last 3 games, like I said, since it looked like maybe he was slowing down, 33 targets, 31 receptions, 370 yards, 2 touchdowns in the first matchup versus Denver. Again, Chris made the point. They're awful versus tight ends. 9 targets, 124 yards, 9 receptions. Biggest game of the year. So I'm going to try to find a way. If not, I do like, again, and normally I do not spend up on tight ends, but I like Darren Waller this week, 5,200 DK, 64 on FanDuel, 23 targets the first 4 games. He's seen 26 the last 3. Again, 15 receptions first 4 games. He's got 20 over the last 3. If you're worried about Daniel Jones returning, and maybe he's got more of a connection with Tyrod Taylor, his biggest game of the season in terms of targets and catches was with Daniel Jones in his last start. Jets allow 5 receptions, 55 yards to opposing tight ends, the most touchdowns in the league to tight ends with 4. And in the last 5 games, 6 tight ends have finished top 14 on DK facing the Jets. 3 have finished top 10. Waller's the best one that they faced. Jake Ferguson, 3,600 on DraftKings, 4,900 on FanDuel, number 1 in red zone targets. And I think he's low owned because the last 2 games he only saw 4 targets. He did catch 4 passes on those. In the previous 4 games, 25 targets, 17 receptions, a touchdown. Faces a Rams team that is 27th on DK, 28th on FanDuel. They're giving up 5 receptions per game, and just an absurd, I don't know what's going on here, almost 13 yards per reception. Tight ends are not fast. Most of them are not like Travis Kelce. They're giving up 13 yards every time a tight end catches the ball. In their last 4 games, opposing tight ends have 21 receptions for 310 yards and 3 touchdowns, with 4 tight ends having at least 1 reception of 27 yards or more. Really, really like Ferguson this week. And then one more. Give me Chigo Okonkwo. I know you're probably
Damn it. That was my guy.
Well, then let me go. I'll go McBride.
No, have at it. I can pick another guy.
Okay. All right. Well, then this is just all about the Falcons. It has nothing to do with really Okonkwo or Levis. It's just we're horrible. In 7 games, tight ends facing the Falcons have finished top 12 on DK 5 times. Top 7 4 times. Number 1 overall twice. Think about Hayden Hurst. Led all tight ends in scoring week 1. He ain't done anything since. Nothing. The 5 tight ends to finish top 12, they averaged almost 16 points on DK. Their average salary was 3,600. So he's right around that range of all these tight ends that are killing my Falcons. So don't be afraid to play him. We just can't cover tight ends. Last season, last 6 games, we gave up a touchdown in all 6 of them to tight ends. They've already given up 3 touchdowns in 7 games this year. We can't cover tight ends. Chigo Okonkwo, that's my last tight end.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. And Jake Ferguson was on my list too. But I want to dig a little bit deeper here. Let's look at Mike Gesicki really quick. New England's playing Miami again, in a game where Miami's going to blow out New England. Mac Jones is going to be pressured. Mike Gesicki is going to be in that intermediate route there. He's only $4,800 on FanDuel. And there's something I wrote about them last week and I'm going to do it again this week. The Pittsburgh tight ends, and I'll just say it. The first one that pops into my mind would be Connor Hayward. Pittsburgh's playing Jacksonville. Jacksonville's 26 overall against tight ends. And to be fair, Kenny Pickett to me has started to look like a above average, quarterback. So anytime, I sit down, like on a Sunday night, like this Sunday, week 8 will be coming to an end. I'm already looking at
celebrating a Lions victory.
Yeah, and I'm already looking at week 9. But to me, Kenny Pickett, I've loved what I've seen from the kid, and he's been able to do some things. And I told you, I love both of their running backs, Najee Harris and Jalen Warren. And if they're able to do what we expect them to do, then Connor Hayward's already on the field a ton because he's a massive human being. He's an extra offensive lineman. And if you're on the field, then there's more chance that you're going to get a target or two. And look, Connor Hayward isn't going to see 7-8 targets. He's going to see 2, maybe 3, and that's even ambitious, but one of those could be a touchdown. And when you're looking at a price tag that cheap when it comes to a tight end, 3 catches for 40 yards, and the value is there. That's all you need when it comes to cheap ass tight ends. Noah Fant is in play for me. Seattle's playing Cleveland. Cleveland's 15th overall against opposing tight ends. And when you look at Seattle's kind of this enigma wrapped up into this, this weird thing. Geno Smith, they did beat the Lions handedly in week 2, and then they lose. But to me, Seattle's still in play. They're still going to be in play, in terms of when the playoffs come around, right? And to me, that is where it comes from. Little games like this where you can get Noah Fant to find the end zone and you barely squeak by and you beat Cleveland. Things like that, go a long way at the end of the season. And last but not least, Hayden Hurst, another Carolina guy facing Houston, and Houston is off. They're just as bad against tight ends. It says they're 32nd here, but I could have swore I just said that what was it? Washington or something was 32nd. I said Denver was what, but it depends.
They're on DraftKings, they are, but on FanDuel, I think they're like 29th.
FanDuel, they're 29th. Yeah. So to me, Hayden Hurst is on the field a whole heck of a lot because he is just a good football player. He's a smart football player. He's got a questionable tag next to his name. And again, Miami is going to blow the doors off the joint, and New England's going to be playing from behind. And last but not least, I'll give you a $4,700 guy on FanDuel, and that's Trey McBride. And this is a tough ass matchup. Baltimore's first overall against tight ends, but we could see a case here where Baltimore is so concentrated on wide receivers and running backs and quarterbacks that all it takes is one. Trey McBride sneaks, in the flat or down the sideline, and one or two, it only takes one or two catches, 30, 40 yards, and fingers crossed, Trey McBride finds the end zone at $4,700 because out of nowhere, Zach Ertz has completely fallen off the face of the earth, and Trey McBride is all the rage in terms of Arizona tight ends. So give me Trey McBride in that setting. Give me a couple DSTs and we'll get the heck out of here and we'll enjoy our Friday night here. Keith.
Absolutely. I do want to say too, just to your point about McBride, because Ertz is now on IR. That is a huge volume void. 6 in targets, 6 in air yards, 3rd in deep targets, 7th in red zone. So that's all what's going away with Ertz. McBride's going to get all that. They have capital. I love that play. I think he's extremely undervalued this week. The defenses, I would look at the Browns because I think 3K, they're one of the better defenses. My Falcons, because they're playing Will Levis. When they played Bryce Young, that was their highest scoring game on both FanDuel and DK. he was making his first career start. Will Levis will be making his first career start. But the two defenses I really like this week, the Vikings, 2,500 on DK, 3,700 on FanDuel. 9 teams on DK are more expensive, but average less points per game. 8 on FanDuel, but again, average less points per game. Last 4 games, 16 points per game allowed, 13 sacks, 7 turnovers faced, 2 defensive touchdowns. Just crazy. The Packers' last 4 games, they have not scored more than 18 points, 8 sacks allowed, 8 turnovers. So I really do like the Vikings. And then again, they blitz a lot, which to your point, I think it's going to be trouble for poor Jordan Love. And then the Bengals, again, if Brock plays, I don't love this play. But if Darnold does, why not? They're 2,200 on DK, 3,600 on FanDuel.
No doubt.
And Darnold's last 18 games, he has 16 interceptions, that he has at least 15 pass attempts. So 14 teams on FanDuel are scoring less points per game and are more expensive than the Bengals. 17 teams on DraftKings, again, scoring less points per game and are more expensive. Those are the 2 defenses I'm probably going to have in lineup, but it's going to be the Vikings more than likely for most of my cash games.
Yeah, and yeah, I swear I know I used the Lord's name in vain earlier, and I'll say it again. You literally mentioned every defense that I had written down
that makes me feel good about them.
That I want to talk about. Absolutely. So this is on the fly because Keith stole everything from me, which is great. Maybe we look Pittsburgh's way, right? Jacksonville is Trevor Lawrence, that he said he had this knee injury thing, but they let the other team hang around kind of on Monday night, if I'm not mistaken. So Pittsburgh might be able to get to Jacksonville a little bit. Maybe we look at even you mentioned Cincinnati. I know you mentioned Green Bay. I just like the Minnesota Green Bay game in general for just sacks and interceptions and things along those lines. What about your Atlanta Falcons, going to Tennessee? Tennessee, right? You can feed the ball to Derek McHenry, like he works at McDonald's, but no, he does not. Derek Henry. But Tennessee right now giving up they're 22nd overall in terms of giving away points to opposing defenses. So the Atlanta Falcons to me are in play as well. The Houston Texans against Carolina. And I know I told you there are a ton of Carolina Panthers offensive weapons I like, but it goes back again to I don't care about touchdowns and points for and points against. I'm looking for turnovers and sacks and things along those lines. And I think that could happen. And last but not least, the New Orleans Saints are playing the Colts, right? And when we saw New Orleans, that's New Orleans, their defense and the way they were able to make adjustments on defense were fantastic, right? So if Derek Carr in the offense can really get fired up, as I told everybody about an hour ago, why can't the Saints DST kind of pick it up and go from there against the Indianapolis Colts? So before we split, Keith, anything you want to tell the people before we get the heck out of here?
Just that the best DFS content there is on this YouTube channel, fantasy6pack.net. You should definitely join the Discord and check it all out. And follow me on Twitter at Keith Flemming.
And that's it. That's all I got to say. So I appreciate you filling in for Dave, Keith. I know I can always count on you. You are one of the superstars here in my mind here at Fantasy Six Pack. So glad you decided to join us. So shout out to Fantasy and Frames for letting you come along. Fantasy Frames and George and everybody over there are huge friends of the show. We respect them. They respect us. It's just a beautiful kind of thing here. So I will say before we split, thanks for watching the broadcast. Thanks for reading our stuff. Thanks for liking and sharing our videos, because without all of you, there is nothing to be had by us. That's why I write and I do all this. It's all for you to consume and enjoy. I enjoy writing it, and I'm glad that everybody enjoys reading it. So I thank you very much. We will see you again this not the same time, but we'll get together again Sunday at noon. We'll be live again Sunday at noon, leading right up to lock, and we're going to talk some stuff. I think Dave will be back by then. Keith, open invite if you want to come and hang on Sunday morning. morning, you're more than welcome to. I'll give you the invite right now. Tell your wife that Chris said that I'm welcome. So I'm going to be there. That would be great to have a 3-man kind of thing on Sunday,
Yeah, I'm down.
Sunday morning. I
Sure.
think it's time we make that adjustment where it's the 3 of us on Sunday, because we get a ton of questions and we go from there. So I'm going to say goodbye. It is a Friday evening live. Enjoy your evening. Be safe. If you're going to drink and watch the World Series, please drive safe. Take Ubers. Don't do anything stupid. And be good and be safe. And we will see you again soon. Talk to you later. Bye.
Go D-backs.